The door slammed so hard the Christmas wreath fell to the floor. I can still hear it, that final violent crack of wood against wood that told me my life had just shattered into 1,000 pieces. It was December 24th, 2019. 7:30 in the evening. Our son was asleep in the next room, dreaming of Santa Claus, while his father packed everything that mattered into 2 suitcases and walked out of our lives forever. "I can't do this anymore," he said. Those were his exact words. Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "I'll explain." Just 5 words that destroyed 8 years of marriage, 8 years of waking up next to the same person, building a life, raising a child. 8 years reduced to nothing in the time it takes to zip a suitcase. I stood there in the hallway, wearing the red dress I'd bought specifically for Christmas Eve dinner. The turkey was in the oven. The table was set with our good china, the one we'd received as a wedding gift from his mother. Candles were lit. Our son's presents were wrapped and hidden in the closet, waiting for midnight. Everything was perfect. Everything was ready. Everything was a lie. "James, please," I whispered, because our son was sleeping and because I still had this stupid, desperate hope that if I kept my voice down, if I stayed calm, if I didn't make a scene, he might change his mind. "It's Christmas Eve. Whatever this is, we can talk about it tomorrow. Please, don't do this to him. Don't do this to us." He looked at me then, really looked at me, and what I saw in his eyes was worse than anger. It was indifference. Complete, absolute indifference. Like I was a stranger asking for directions. Like our entire history together meant nothing. Like the child sleeping in the next room was just an inconvenient detail in his escape plan. "I met someone else," he said. "Her name is Rebecca. I've been seeing her for 6 months. I love her. I'm sorry." 6 months. While I was pregnant with a promotion I'd been working toward, while I was planning our son's 6th birthday party, while I was saving money for a family vacation to Disney World, while I was being a wife and a mother and thinking we were building something real. He was with her. Rebecca. A name I'd never heard until that moment. A name that would haunt every single day that came after. "You're lying," I said, even though I knew he wasn't. Even though everything suddenly made sense. The late nights at work, the new cologne, the way he'd started going to the gym at 5 in the morning, the credit card statement I'd found with charges to restaurants I'd never been to. All those little moments I'd ignored because I trusted him. 'Cause I believed in us. "I'm not lying," he said. "I should have told you sooner. But I'm telling you now. It's over. I'm leaving." I grabbed his arm. I actually grabbed his arm like some desperate character in a bad movie. And I hated myself for it even as I was doing it. "What about Ethan? What about your son? You're just going to leave him on Christmas Eve. What kind of father does that?" He pulled away from me, and the way he did it, gentle, careful, like he was peeling off a piece of tape, was somehow worse than if he'd shoved me. "I'll still be his father," he said. "I'll see him on weekends. I'll pay child support. This doesn't change that." But it did change everything. It changed the story I'd been telling myself about who we were. It changed every memory I had, because now I had to wonder, when was he already thinking about leaving? When was he already with her? Was it during our anniversary dinner? During Ethan's first day of school? During my father's funeral, when he held my hand and told me everything would be okay? "Please," I said one more time, and I hated the sound of my own voice, broken and begging. "Please don't go." He picked up his suitcases. He walked to the door. And then he said something that would echo in my mind for years. "You'll be fine. You're stronger than you think." And he left. Just like that. The man I'd loved since I was 23 years old. The man I'd married in a small chapel with white roses everywhere. The man who'd held my hand while I gave birth. The man who'd promised to love me in sickness and in health, for better or for worse. He walked out into the cold December night and didn't look back. I stood in the hallway for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. The turkey timer went off in the kitchen. The candles burned down on the dining table. And I stood there, frozen, trying to understand how my life had just ended on the one night that was supposed to be about hope and new beginnings and magic. Eventually, I walked to Ethan's room. He was sleeping peacefully, one arm wrapped around his stuffed dinosaur. his face peaceful and innocent. He didn't know yet that his world had just collapsed. He didn't know that when he woke up tomorrow morning, everything would be different. He didn't know that his father had chosen another woman over Christmas morning with his son. I sat on the edge of his bed and watched him sleep, and I made a promise right then. A promise that would define everything that came after. I promised myself that he would never see me break. That I would be strong enough for both of us. That somehow, someway, I would turn this nightmare into something he could survive. But in that moment, sitting in the dark of my son's room while the man I loved drove away with another woman, I had no idea how I was going to keep that promise. I had no idea that this was only the beginning. I need to go back. I need you to understand that it didn't start on Christmas Eve. That was just the moment everything finally broke open, but the cracks had been forming for months. Maybe longer. Maybe I just didn't want to see them. It started in June. Or maybe it started in March. Honestly, I've replayed it so many times in my mind that the timeline blurs, but I remember the first moment I felt something was wrong. It was a Tuesday morning. James was in the shower, and his phone buzzed on the nightstand. I wasn't the kind of wife who checked her husband's phone. I trusted him completely. But something made me look. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was God trying to warn me. The message preview said, "Can't wait to see you tonight." No name. Just a heart emoji. Red. Pulsing on the screen like an accusation. When he came out of the bathroom, towel around his waist, hair still wet, I asked him about it. Visual. Like, "Hey, who texted you? Said they can't wait to see you tonight." He didn't even hesitate. "Oh, that's Marcus from work. We're grabbing drinks after the meeting." He's an idiot with emojis. He laughed. He kissed my forehead. He got dressed and left for work, and I believed him. Because why wouldn't I? We'd been together for 8 years. We had a son. We had a mortgage. We had a life. But that red heart stayed with me. It lived in the back of my mind like a splinter I couldn't quite reach. The second moment was in August. We were at a family barbecue at his brother's house. James was on his phone the entire time. Not obviously. Just constantly checking it, sneaking glances, typing quick responses when he thought no one was looking. I watched him from across the yard while I was helping Ethan with a sprinkler, and I saw the expression on his face. This little smile, private and tender, the kind of smile I remembered from when we first started dating. When was the last time he'd smiled at me like that? I walked over to him. "Everything okay? You've been on your phone all afternoon." "Just work stuff," he said, slipping the phone into his pocket. "The Henderson account is blowing up." "Sorry, babe. I'll put it away." But he didn't. 20 minutes later, I saw him in the garage, phone pressed to his ear, talking in a low voice. When I approached, he quickly said, "Yeah, I'll call you back," and hung up. "Who was that?" "Yes. Client," he said. "Can't get a moment of peace even on a Sunday." Another lie. Another brick in the wall that was slowly rising between us. The third moment was in October. I found a receipt in his jacket pocket when I was taking it to the dry cleaner. Dinner at Giovanni's. A restaurant downtown, expensive, the kind of place we used to go for anniversaries. The date on the receipt was October 12th. I checked my calendar. That was the night he'd told me he was working late on a presentation. The bill was for 2 people. 2 glasses of wine. 2 entrees. Tiramisu for dessert. $147. I confronted him that night. I put the receipt on the kitchen counter and asked him to explain. He looked at it, looked at me, and then he said, "That was the dinner with the Henderson team. 3 of us went." I picked up the tab because I'm trying to close the deal. "It says 2 entrees," I said quietly. "Marcus left early," he replied without missing a beat. "Before dinner came." "Look, I don't appreciate being interrogated like this. What's going on with you lately? You've been acting paranoid." And just like that, he turned it around on me. Made me feel crazy for asking questions. Made me feel guilty for not trusting him. So I apologized. I actually apologized to him for finding evidence of his lies. Looking back now, I can see the pattern so clearly. But when you're inside it, when you're living it day by day, it's different. You tell yourself stories to make sense of it. You convince yourself that you're overreacting, that you're being insecure, that you're seeing problems where there aren't any. Because the alternative, accepting that the person you love most in the world is betraying you, is too painful to face. By November, he'd stopped touching me. Not completely. We still had the routines of marriage. Kiss goodbye in the morning. A hug when he came home. But there was no warmth in it anymore. No desire. We hadn't made love in 6 weeks. When I tried to initiate, he'd say he was tired or stressed about work or not feeling well. Always an excuse. Always a wall. I started losing weight. Not intentionally. I just couldn't eat. There was this constant knot in my stomach. This anxiety that I couldn't name or explain. I'd wake up at 3 in the morning and find myself staring at the ceiling, wondering what I'd done wrong, wondering how to fix something I couldn't even identify. My best friend Sarah noticed. We met for coffee one afternoon in early December, and she looked at me with concern in her eyes. "Are you okay? You look exhausted." I wanted to tell her everything. I wanted to say that my marriage was falling apart and I didn't know why. But instead I smiled and said, "I'm fine. Just busy with work and Ethan's school stuff. You know how it is." She didn't believe me. I could see it in her face. But she didn't push, and I was grateful for that because I wasn't ready to say the truth out loud. Saying it would make it real. On December 15th, I found a charge on our credit card for jewelry. Not expensive. $87. But we hadn't exchanged Christmas gifts yet. And when I checked, it wasn't for me. The jewelry wasn't in the house. Checked everywhere. That night, I lay in bed next to him, feeling the space between us like an ocean. He was asleep or pretending to be asleep, breathing evenly. And I thought about waking him up. I thought about demanding answers, about refusing to accept any more lies, about fighting for my marriage. But I was so tired. Tired of questioning. Tired of doubting. Tired of feeling like I was going crazy. So I just lay there in the dark, listening to him breathe, and I prayed. I prayed that I was wrong. I prayed that there was some explanation for everything that made sense. I prayed that we would make it to Christmas as a family and that somehow, in the magic of that season, we would find our way back to each other. God heard my prayer. But the answer wasn't what I expected. 9 days later, on Christmas Eve, James would tell me about Rebecca. He would tell me that for 6 months, while I was doubting myself, blaming myself, trying desperately to save something that was already gone, he had been building a new life with someone else. All those little moments, all those lies, all those nights I lay awake wondering what I'd done wrong. They weren't my imagination. They weren't paranoia. They were the truth slowly revealing itself, piece by painful piece. And the worst part, even after everything, even after finding that text and that receipt and that credit card charge, part of me still didn't want to believe it. Part of me still wanted to believe in the man I'd married, in the promises we'd made, in the future we'd planned together. That's the cruelest thing about betrayal. Doesn't just break your heart. Makes you doubt your own mind. Before everything fell apart, we were happy. Or at least I thought we were. That's the thing that haunts me most. Not knowing if any of it was real, or if I was living in a beautiful dream while he was already planning his escape. We met when I was 23 years old. I was working at a bookstore downtown, saving money for graduate school, and he came in every Thursday afternoon looking for business books. He had this confident walk, this easy smile, and the third time he came in, he asked me out for coffee. We went to that little place on 5th Street, the one with the mismatched chairs and the owner who knew everyone's order by heart. We talked for 4 hours. 4 hours that felt like 20 minutes. He told me about his dreams of starting his own consulting firm. I told him about wanting to be a teacher, about loving literature, about how I believed stories could change people's lives. He listened like every word I said mattered. He looked at me like I was the most interesting person he'd ever met. And when he walked me home that night, he kissed me under the streetlight in front of my apartment building, and I thought, this is it. This is the person I'm going to marry. I was right. 2 years later, we got married in a small chapel outside the city. My dress was simple, off-white lace I'd found at a consignment shop. His mother cried through the whole ceremony. My father walked me down the aisle and whispered, "He's a good man. He'll take care of you." We honeymooned in a cabin by the lake because we couldn't afford anything fancy, and it was perfect. We spent 3 days doing nothing but talking and making love and planning our future. We wanted 3 children, a house with a backyard and a dog, Sunday dinners with extended family. Simple, ordinary happiness. When was the last time he'd smiled at me like that? I walked over to him. "Everything okay? You've been on your phone all afternoon." "Just work stuff," he said, slipping the phone into his pocket. "The Henderson account is blowing up." "Sorry, babe. I'll put it away." But he didn't. 20 minutes later, I saw him in the garage, phone pressed to his ear, talking in a low voice. When I approached, he quickly said, "Yeah, I'll call you back," and hung up. "Who was that?" "Yes. Client," he said. "Can't get a moment of peace even on a Sunday." Another lie. Another brick in the wall that was slowly rising between us. The third moment was in October. I found a receipt in his jacket pocket when I was taking it to the dry cleaner. Dinner at Giovanni's. A restaurant downtown, expensive, the kind of place we used to go for anniversaries. The date on the receipt was October 12th. I checked my calendar. That was the night he'd told me he was working late on a presentation. The bill was for 2 people. 2 glasses of wine. 2 entrees. Tiramisu for dessert. $147. I confronted him that night. I put the receipt on the kitchen counter and asked him to explain. He looked at it, looked at me, and then he said, "That was the dinner with the Henderson team. 3 of us went." I picked up the tab because I'm trying to close the deal. "It says 2 entrees," I said quietly. "Marcus left early," he replied without missing a beat. "Before dinner came." "Look, I don't appreciate being interrogated like this. What's going on with you lately? You've been acting paranoid." And just like that, he turned it around on me. Made me feel crazy for asking questions. Made me feel guilty for not trusting him. So I apologized. I actually apologized to him for finding evidence of his lies. Looking back now, I can see the pattern so clearly. But when you're inside it, when you're living it day by day, it's different. You tell yourself stories to make sense of it. You convince yourself that you're overreacting, that you're being insecure, that you're seeing problems where there aren't any. Because the alternative, accepting that the person you love most in the world is betraying you, is too painful to face. By November, he'd stopped touching me. Not completely. We still had the routines of marriage. Kiss goodbye in the morning. A hug when he came home. But there was no warmth in it anymore. No desire. We hadn't made love in 6 weeks. When I tried to initiate, he'd say he was tired or stressed about work or not feeling well. Always an excuse. Always a wall. I started losing weight. Not intentionally. I just couldn't eat. There was this constant knot in my stomach. This anxiety that I couldn't name or explain. I'd wake up at 3 in the morning and find myself staring at the ceiling, wondering what I'd done wrong, wondering how to fix something I couldn't even identify. My best friend Sarah noticed. We met for coffee one afternoon in early December, and she looked at me with concern in her eyes. "Are you okay? You look exhausted." I wanted to tell her everything. I wanted to say that my marriage was falling apart and I didn't know why. But instead I smiled and said, "I'm fine. Just busy with work and Ethan's school stuff. You know how it is." She didn't believe me. I could see it in her face. But she didn't push, and I was grateful for that because I wasn't ready to say the truth out loud. Saying it would make it real. On December 15th, I found a charge on our credit card for jewelry. Not expensive. $87. But we hadn't exchanged Christmas gifts yet, and when I checked, it wasn't for me. The jewelry wasn't in the house. Checked everywhere. That night, I lay in bed next to him, feeling the space between us like an ocean. He was asleep or pretending to be asleep, breathing evenly. And I thought about waking him up. I thought about demanding answers, about refusing to accept any more lies, about fighting for my marriage. But I was so tired. Tired of questioning. Tired of doubting. Tired of feeling like I was going crazy. So I just lay there in the dark, listening to him breathe, and I prayed. I prayed that I was wrong. I prayed that there was some explanation for everything that made sense. I prayed that we would make it to Christmas as a family, and that somehow, in the magic of that season, we would find our way back to each other. God heard my prayer. But the answer wasn't what I expected. 9 days later, on Christmas Eve, James would tell me about Rebecca. He would tell me that for 6 months, while I was doubting myself, blaming myself, trying desperately to save something that was already gone, he had been building a new life with someone else. All those little moments, all those lies, all those nights I lay awake wondering what I'd done wrong. They weren't my imagination. They weren't paranoia. They were the truth slowly revealing itself, piece by painful piece. And the worst part, even after everything, even after finding that text and that receipt and that credit card charge, part of me still didn't want to believe it. Part of me still wanted to believe in the man I'd married, in the promises we'd made, in the future we'd planned together. That's the cruelest thing about betrayal. Doesn't just break your heart, makes you doubt your own mind. Before everything fell apart, we were happy. Or at least I thought we were. That's the thing that haunts me most. Not knowing if any of it was real, or if I was living in a beautiful dream while he was already planning his escape. We met when I was 23 years old. I was working at a bookstore downtown, saving money for graduate school, and he came in every Thursday afternoon looking for business books. He had this confident walk, this easy smile, and the third time he came in, he asked me out for coffee. We went to that little place on 5th Street, the one with the mismatched chairs and the owner who knew everyone's order by heart. We talked for 4 hours. 4 hours that felt like 20 minutes. He told me about his dreams of starting his own consulting firm. I told him about wanting to be a teacher, about loving literature, about how I believed stories could change people's lives. He listened like every word I said mattered. He looked at me like I was the most interesting person he'd ever met. And when he walked me home that night, he kissed me under the streetlight in front of my apartment building, and I thought, this is it. This is the person I'm going to marry. I was right. 2 years later, we got married in a small chapel outside the city. My dress was simple, off-white lace I'd found at a consignment shop. His mother cried through the whole ceremony. My father walked me down the aisle and whispered, "He's a good man. He'll take care of you." We honeymooned in a cabin by the lake because we couldn't afford anything fancy, and it was perfect. We spent 3 days doing nothing but talking and making love and planning our future. We wanted 3 children, a house with a backyard and a dog, Sunday dinners with extended family, simple, ordinary happiness. And then I'd practiced smiling in the mirror. "Mommy!" Ethan was jumping on my bed now, his whole body vibrating with excitement. "Come see. Santa brought everything I asked for. Where's Daddy?" There it was. The question I'd been dreading. "Daddy had to go on a work trip, baby. Last minute. Very important client. But he'll call later, okay?" The lie tasted like poison in my mouth. Ethan's face fell for just a second, but he was 6 years old and it was Christmas morning and there were presents waiting, so he recovered quickly. "Okay. Come on." I spent the next hour watching my son open gifts, his face glowing with joy, while inside I was screaming. I made pancakes shaped like snowmen. Took photos. I called my mother and lied to her too, said James was working. No, everything was fine. Yes, we'd come by later for dinner. By noon, reality started crashing in. James wasn't answering my calls. I tried 17 times. 17 times I'd heard his voice on the voicemail. "Hey, this is James, leave a message." 17 times I'd hung up without speaking because what was I supposed to say? I checked our bank account. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely type the password. The joint account we'd shared for 8 years had $472 in it. There should have been $8,000. $8,000 we'd been saving for a down payment on a house, for emergencies, for our future. He'd taken it. All of it. Left me with barely enough to make rent. Called the bank. I need to report unauthorized withdrawals. The woman on the other end was professional and kind. I'm looking at the account now. It shows that James Morrison withdrew $7,500 in cash on December 23rd. Since he's a joint account holder, this isn't technically unauthorized. Hung up. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. December 23rd. The day before he left. He'd planned this. He'd taken our savings knowing he was going to abandon us the next day. He'd looked me in the eye that morning, kissed me goodbye, and then gone to the bank and stolen our future. The next blow came at 2 in the afternoon. An email notification on my phone. From our landlord. Notice of non-payment. Rent for January is due in 1 week. Please remit payment of $1,850 or contact this office immediately to discuss. January rent. We always paid rent together, split from our joint account on the 1st of every month. But James handled the finances. I trusted him to manage it. And apparently he hadn't paid December either. I called the landlord, Mr. Chen, a quiet man in his 60s who'd always been fair with us. Mr. Chen, this is Claire Morrison. I just got your email about rent. There must be some mistake. No mistake, Mrs. Morrison. December rent was never paid. I've been patient because you've been good tenants, but I need payment for both December and January by the end of the week, or I'll have to begin eviction proceedings. $3,700. I had $472 in the bank, and a teaching salary that wouldn't resume until January 5th when school started again. I understand, I said quietly. I'll figure something out. After I hung up, I sat on the kitchen floor and tried to do math through the panic. Rent, utilities, car payment, insurance, groceries, Ethan's after-school care. The credit cards I didn't even know were maxed out until I started checking. James had destroyed our finances on his way out the door. At 4 o'clock my mother called. Claire, where are you? Dinner's ready. Mom, I'm sorry. Ethan isn't feeling well. I think we're going to stay home. What? Put James on the phone. He's at work, Mom. There was a long pause. My mother knew me too well. Claire Marie, what's going on? And that's when I broke. That's when I couldn't hold it together anymore. He left, I whispered. James left. Last night. Christmas Eve. He's been having an affair and he left us and he took all our money and I don't know what to do. I heard my mother suck in her breath. I'm coming over. No, Mom, please. Can't. I can't face anyone right now. I need to figure this out. You don't have to figure it out alone. Yes, I do, I said. I have to be strong for Ethan. I can't fall apart. I can't. But I was falling apart. I'd been falling apart for hours, held together by nothing but the need to protect my son from the truth. My mother came anyway. Course she did. She arrived 40 minutes later with food and my father, and she took one look at my face and pulled me into her arms. I cried on her shoulder while my dad played with Ethan in the living room, keeping him distracted, keeping him from seeing his mother break. How could he do this? Kept asking. How could he leave us on Christmas Eve? What kind of person does that? My mother didn't have answers. She just held me and let me cry. That night, after my parents left, after Ethan was asleep, I found James's Facebook page. I don't know why I did it. Some masochistic need to see the truth. And there it was. Photo posted 4 hours ago. James with his arm around a blonde woman, both of them smiling at a restaurant. The caption, starting new traditions. Rebecca. That was Rebecca. She was young, younger than me. Pretty. Glowing with happiness. And James looked at her the way he used to look at me. The comments were full of people I knew. His co-workers. His friends. Beautiful couple. So happy for you both. About time. About time. How long had people known? How long had I been the only one in the dark? The only one who didn't know my marriage was over? I read through the comments with a sick fascination, watching our life together be erased in real time. No one mentioned me. No one mentioned Ethan. It was like we'd never existed. I checked his Instagram. Photos of them together going back months. The two of them hiking, concerts, at restaurants, at a beach I didn't recognize. All posted on days when he told me he was working late or traveling for business. 6 months of lies, documented in perfect squares. I threw my phone across the room. It hit the wall and the screen cracked, spiderwebbing from the corner, and I was glad. I wanted to break something. I wanted to destroy something the way my life had been destroyed. But I couldn't, because Ethan was asleep in the next room, and he needed me to be whole. December 26th was worse. That's when the calls started. James's mother, his brother, friends from church, his co-workers, everyone calling to tell me how sorry they were, how they hadn't known he was unhappy, how they hoped we could work it out. And then the other calls. The credit card companies. A furniture store saying a delivery was scheduled for January 2nd to an address I didn't recognize. James had apparently bought a whole new bedroom set for his new life with Rebecca on our credit card, the one we were jointly responsible for. $4,000 of debt for furniture that would never be in my house. Called James again, and again, and again. Finally, on the 10th try, he answered. "What do you want, Claire?" His voice was cold, annoyed, like I was bothering him. "What do I want? You stole our savings. You didn't pay rent. You maxed out our credit cards. You left your son on Christmas and posted photos with another woman. And you're asking me what I want." "The money was mine too," he said. "I earned most of it. And I needed to start over. You'll be fine. File for child support. File for child support. James, we don't have enough money to make it through the week. We're going to be evicted. Do you understand that? Your son is going to lose his home." Silence. Then, "That's not my problem anymore." And he hung up. I sat there with the phone in my hand, staring at the wall, trying to process what I'd just heard. That's not my problem anymore. His son. The child he'd held in his arms and cried over. The little boy who still asked for him every morning. Not his problem. That's when something inside me shifted. That's when the grief started turning into something else. Something harder. Something that felt like steel forming in my chest. I looked around our little rental house. The photos on the walls. Ethan's drawings on the refrigerator. The life we'd built that was now crumbling to dust. And I made a decision. I wasn't going to beg anymore. I wasn't going to cry anymore. I wasn't going to wait for James to fix what he'd broken. I was going to survive this. Somehow. Some way. For Ethan. For myself. I didn't know how yet. I just knew I had to. The first thing I did was borrow money from my parents. Hated asking. I was 31 years old, a grown woman with a career and a child, and I had to call my father and ask him to cover my rent like I was 22 and fresh out of college. "Of course, sweetheart," he said. "Whatever you need." They gave me $4,000. Money they'd been saving for their trip to Ireland, the one they'd been planning for 5 years. My mother said it didn't matter, that they could go later, that family came first. But I saw the disappointment in her eyes when she handed me the check, and it burned. I promised I'd pay them back. I had no idea how, but I promised anyway. The money covered December and January rent with a little left over for groceries. It bought me time. But time for what? I still had no plan. No path forward. Just a mounting pile of problems and no idea where to start. Hired a lawyer. Or tried to. I called 7 different family law attorneys during the first week of January. The consultations were all the same. "How long were you married?" 8 years. "And he's the primary earner?" "Yes. He makes about $90,000 a year. I make 42 as a teacher." "Good. You'll be entitled to spousal support and child support. We'll file immediately. My retainer is $5,000. $5,000 I didn't have. $5,000 I couldn't borrow again from my parents, who'd already given me everything they had saved. The 8th lawyer I called was different. Her name was Patricia Gomez, and her voice was kind. "Listen," she said after I explained my situation. "I'm going to be honest with you. Yes, you need legal representation. But if you don't have the money right now, here's what you do. Go to the courthouse. File for an emergency custody and support order yourself. It's not ideal, but it's free, and it'll get the process started. Once support payments begin, you can hire proper representation. Can I do that? File myself. It's not easy, but yes. The clerk's office can give you the forms. Fill them out carefully. Be thorough. Document everything. Every text, every email, every withdrawal from your joint account. Courts don't like parents who abandon their financial responsibilities, especially around the holidays. I thanked her and hung up. Then I spent the next 3 days at the courthouse, filling out forms I barely understood, standing in lines, getting papers notarized. The whole system felt designed to humiliate me. Everyone there could see what I was. A desperate woman whose husband had left her, begging the state to force him to support his own child. The forms asked questions that made me cry right there in the waiting room. Describe the circumstances of the separation. How was I supposed to condense the worst night of my life into 3 lines on a government form? When I finally submitted everything, the clerk looked at me with sympathy. The court date is set for February 18th. He'll be served with papers within the week. 6 more weeks. 6 weeks before anything could even begin to be resolved. I went back to work on January 5th. Walking into my classroom felt surreal. My students bounced in with stories about their Christmas presents and family trips and everything they'd done over break. They asked me about my holiday. It was nice, I lied. Very quiet. I taught lessons. I graded papers. I smiled and encouraged and helped with math problems and spelling words. And the whole time I felt like I was watching myself from outside my body, like I was an actress playing the role of a teacher, going through the motions while inside I was drowning. My coworker Jennifer noticed. She cornered me in the break room during lunch. "Claire, are you okay? You seem off." "I'm fine," I said automatically. "You've lost weight. And you have dark circles under your eyes. What's going on?" So I told her. I don't know why. Maybe because keeping it secret was exhausting. Maybe because I needed someone to know that I was barely holding it together. She listened quietly, then said, "My cousin went through something similar. She used an app called Legal Aid Pro. It's not free, but it's cheaper than a lawyer. They help you file all the paperwork correctly." There was something. Thread to pull. That night, after Ethan went to bed, I downloaded the app and paid the $79 monthly fee I couldn't afford. But if it helped me get child support faster, it was worth it. The app walked me through financial affidavits, custody arrangements, support calculations. I spent hours inputting information, scanning documents, building my case. Gave me something to do. Something that felt like progress. James was served with papers on January 12th. I know because he called me 30 minutes after the process server left his new apartment. "You're suing me for child support. Are you serious right now? You abandoned your son," I said quietly. "What did you expect me to do? I told you I'd pay support. I don't need lawyers and courts involved. You told me a lot of things, James. Forgive me for not trusting your word anymore." He made a sound of disgust. "You know what? Fine. Take me to court. But don't expect me to make this easy for you. Have a good lawyer." He says I can argue for 50-50 custody, which means reduced child support. 50-50 custody. You haven't seen Ethan once since you left. You haven't even called him. That's because you're making this hostile. My lawyer says you're engaging in parental alienation. I laughed. Actually laughed. Parental alienation. You left on Christmas Eve and haven't contacted your son in 3 weeks. That's not alienation. That's abandonment. We'll see what the judge says. He hung up. I sat there shaking. He was going to fight me. Course he was. Because admitting he was wrong, admitting he'd destroyed our family for another woman, would cost him money and pride. The bills kept coming. A credit card I didn't know existed, maxed out at $8,000. Medical bills from Ethan's checkup in November that insurance only partially covered. The car payment I'd thought was on autopay but wasn't. I started selling things. It started small old textbooks on Facebook Marketplace, clothes I didn't wear anymore, kitchen appliances we'd gotten as wedding gifts and never used. I made $400 the first week. Felt like victory and defeat at the same time. Then I sold my engagement ring. I'd been wearing it on a chain around my neck, unable to throw it away but unable to keep wearing it on my finger. It was simple, a half-carat diamond in a white gold setting. Nothing fancy, but it had meant everything to me. The pawn shop offered me $800. It's worth at least $2,000, I said. The man behind the counter shrugged. Not to me, it's not. $800 cash right now. Take it or leave it. Took it. I used the money to pay the electric bill, buy groceries, and put gas in the car. It was gone in 4 days. Ethan asked about his father constantly. When is Daddy coming home? He's not, baby. Remember, Daddy has a new place now. Can we visit him? Maybe soon. Why doesn't he call me? I had no answer for that. How do you explain to a 6-year-old that his father has chosen a new life that doesn't include him? How do you protect a child from the truth that the person who's supposed to love him most in the world has simply stopped? I started seeing a therapist. Free sessions through my school's employee assistance program. I got 3 visits and I used every minute. I feel like I'm drowning, I told her. Every time I think I'm getting my head above water, another wave hits. You're in survival mode right now, she said. That's normal. But you need to start thinking about the future. What do you want your life to look like a year from now? I don't know. I just want to make it through today. Then that's your goal. One day at a time. But one day at a time was excruciating. Every morning I woke up and remembered, all over again, that my life had fallen apart. Every night I lay in bed alone and felt the emptiness next to me like a physical wound. I tried dating apps. I lasted 3 days before deleting them all. I wasn't ready. I wasn't whole enough. And the thought of trusting another man, of letting someone close enough to hurt me again, made me physically sick. My friend Sarah came over one night with wine and takeout. You're being too hard on yourself, she said. You're doing everything you can. It's not enough, I said. I'm failing at everything. Can't pay my bills. I can't afford a lawyer. I can't protect Ethan from the truth. I can't even get his father to acknowledge he exists. You're not failing. You're surviving something that would break most people. I am breaking, I whispered. I'm breaking into 1,000 pieces, and I don't know how to put myself back together. She hugged me while I cried. Again. Always crying. I was so tired of crying. February 18th arrived. Court date. I put on my best dress, the navy one I wore to parent-teacher conferences. I did my makeup carefully, trying to hide the exhaustion. I printed out every document, organized everything in folders. James showed up with a lawyer in a $1,000 suit. I showed up alone with my folders and my fear and a prayer that justice existed. The hearing lasted 20 minutes. The judge, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes, looked at the financial affidavits, looked at the timeline, looked at James. Mr. Morrison, you withdrew $7,500 from your joint account the day before you left? Yes, Your Honor. That was my contribution to the savings. And you haven't paid any child support since December 24th? I've been establishing my new living situation. That's not what I asked. Have you provided any financial support for your son? No, but have you seen your son since December 24th? Silence. Mr. Morrison. No, Your Honor. The judge made a note. Then she looked at me. Mrs. Morrison, I'm granting temporary child support in the amount of $1,600 per month, retroactive to January 1st. Mr. Morrison, you owe $4,800 in back support, due within 30 days. We'll schedule a full hearing for custody and permanent support in 90 days. $1,600 a month. It wasn't enough to replace what James had been contributing, but it was something. It was air when I'd been suffocating. In the hallway after, James approached me. His lawyer hung back, talking on his phone. $1,600 a month, James said. You know I can't afford that. You can afford a new apartment and new furniture and dinners at expensive restaurants with your girlfriend. You can afford to support your son. This is why we're over, Claire. You're vindictive. I stared at him. This man I'd loved for 8 years. This stranger. No, I said quietly. We're over because you're a coward who destroyed his family for someone new and shiny. We're over because when your son needed you most, you chose yourself. Don't blame me for your choices. I walked away and didn't look back. On the way home, something inside me shifted. The rage was still there. The hurt was still there. But underneath it, something else was growing. Determination. I was going to survive this. Not just survive, I was going to win. James didn't pay. The 30 days came and went, and the $4,800 in back support never appeared. I checked my account obsessively, refreshing it 10 times a day, hoping to see a deposit that never came. On day 31, I called the court. What happens when he doesn't pay? You can file for contempt of court, the clerk said. But that requires another hearing, more paperwork, more waiting. More time I didn't have. The Child Support Enforcement Office said they could garnish his wages, but it would take 60 to 90 days to process. We'll get you your money, the woman assured me. It just takes time. Everyone kept telling me to wait, to be patient, to let the system work. But the system moved at a glacial pace while my life was on fire. March arrived with new problems. Ethan got sick, really sick. What started as a cold turned into bronchitis, then pneumonia. I took him to the emergency room at 2 in the morning when his fever spiked to 104 and he couldn't stop coughing. They admitted him for 3 days. 3 days of sitting by his hospital bed, watching him struggle to breathe, listening to machines beep, praying to a God I wasn't sure was listening anymore. The nurses were kind. The doctors were competent. And I was terrified. Is Daddy coming? Ethan asked on the second day. His voice small and raspy. I'll call him, baby. Did call. 5 times. James never answered. Never called back. Never came. Our son was in the hospital, and his father couldn't be bothered to show up. When Ethan was finally released, I got the bill. Even with insurance, I owed $2,800. $2,800 I absolutely did not have. I set up a payment plan. $50 a month for the next 4.5 years. It was all they'd accept. I was drowning in debt. Medical bills. Credit cards I'd maxed out buying groceries and paying utilities. The car payment I kept missing because there was never enough money. The student loans from my teaching degree that I'd put into forbearance but would eventually come due. Every day felt like trying to plug holes in a sinking ship with my bare hands. I started working a second job. Tutoring after school 3 nights a week. $25 an hour, and I'd tutor until 9 at night, then drive home exhausted, help Ethan with homework I should have helped with earlier, put him to bed too late, and collapse into my own bed with barely enough energy to set my alarm. I was always tired. Bone deep, soul-crushing tired. The kind of tired that made everything hurt. My body, my mind, my heart. My teaching suffered. I didn't have time to plan engaging lessons anymore. I showed videos more than I should have. I assigned worksheet after worksheet because I didn't have the energy to grade creative projects. My principal called me in for a meeting. Claire, I'm concerned about you. Your performance has declined significantly this semester. Multiple parents have complained that their children aren't being challenged. I'm doing my best, I said. I know you're going through a difficult time personally, but I need you to understand that we have standards to maintain. If things don't improve, we'll need to discuss whether this position is the right fit. I was going to lose my job. The one stable thing I had left, and I was going to lose it because I was too exhausted and broken to do it well. I started having panic attacks. The first one happened in the grocery store. I was calculating costs in my head, adding up items in my cart, trying to stay under $50. A woman in front of me was buying steak and wine and expensive cheese, not even looking at prices, just tossing things in her cart like money didn't matter. And suddenly I couldn't breathe. The walls closed in. My vision tunneled. My heart raced so fast I thought I was having a heart attack. I abandoned my cart in the middle of the aisle and stumbled outside, gasping for air, tears streaming down my face. A stranger asked if I was okay. I nodded and lied, even though I was very clearly not okay. The panic attacks kept coming. In traffic, during staff meetings, at 3 in the morning when I woke from nightmares about being homeless, about losing Ethan, about the million ways everything could get worse. I went back on antidepressants. The prescription cost $40 I didn't have, but the free clinic downtown wrote it for a generic that cost $12. The pills made me nauseous and foggy, but they took the edge off the constant terror, so I kept taking them. April came. The full custody hearing was scheduled for April 30th. James's lawyer filed a motion for 50-50 custody, claiming I was mentally unstable and struggling financially, therefore an unfit primary custodian. The irony was devastating. I was struggling financially because James had abandoned us. I was mentally unstable because James had destroyed our family. And now he was using the consequences of his actions as evidence that I shouldn't have custody of our son. I finally scraped together enough money to hire Patricia Gomez, the lawyer who'd helped me at the beginning. She charged me $3,000. A bargain rate, she said, because she believed in my case. I borrowed half from my parents again. Sold my laptop, my wedding china, my grandmother's antique dresser. Came up with the rest dollar by painful dollar. Patricia reviewed everything and was blunt. He's not going to get 50-50. The court doesn't look kindly on parents who abandon their children for months and then suddenly want custody. But he might get visitation. Are you prepared for that? Prepared for what? For Ethan to spend weekends with his father and the woman he left us for. Yes, that's likely. The thought made me sick. But what choice did I have? 2 weeks before the hearing, I broke down completely. It was a Saturday afternoon. Ethan was at my parents' house. I was alone in the apartment, surrounded by bills I couldn't pay, staring at my bank account balance of $17.63. I'd done everything right. I'd worked 2 jobs. I'd filed all the paperwork. Cut every expense I could. I'd sold everything that had any value. And I was still failing. I couldn't do this anymore. The thought came quietly, insidiously. I can't do this anymore. What would happen to Ethan if I just stopped? If I gave up, James would have to step up. He'd have to be a father. Maybe that would be better for everyone. I looked at the bottle of antidepressants on my counter. 30 pills. I wondered if that would be enough. I actually stood there, holding the bottle, thinking about it. Not because I really wanted to die, but because I was so tired of fighting, so tired of losing, so tired of being strong when I had nothing left to be strong with. My phone rang. My mother. I almost didn't answer. Claire, honey, Ethan wants to talk to you. Then Ethan's voice, bright and happy. Mommy, Grandma is teaching me to make cookies. And we're going to the park. I miss you. I miss you too, baby. Are you okay, Mommy? You sound sad. I'm okay. I'm just tired. When you pick me up, can we watch a movie? Just you and me. Of course, sweetheart. Whatever you want. I love you, Mommy. I love you too. After we hung up, I put the pill bottle down. I walked to Ethan's room and stood in the doorway, looking at his unmade bed. His toys scattered on the floor. His drawings taped to the walls. He needed me. Not perfect. Not fixed. Not strong. Just there. Present. Alive. Fighting even when I wanted to quit. I sat on his bed and cried for a long time. Ugly, gasping sobs that came from somewhere deep and primal. I cried for everything I'd lost. For the life I'd planned that would never exist. For the man I'd loved who'd turned into a stranger. For my son who deserved better than any of this. And when I was done crying, when there were no more tears left, I felt something unexpected. Not hope exactly. Not yet. But something close to it. Something stubborn and fierce that refused to die no matter how hard I tried to extinguish it. I thought about my grandmother, who'd raised 6 children alone during the Depression after my grandfather died. I thought about my mother, who'd worked 2 jobs to put herself through nursing school. I thought about all the women in my family who'd survived impossible things. Came from survivors. I had their blood in my veins. Their strength in my bones. I wasn't going to give up. Not today. Not tomorrow. Not ever. I didn't know how I was going to win. I didn't know how I was going to pay the bills or fix my marriage or heal my broken heart or raise my son to be whole despite everything. But I knew I was going to try. I knew that quitting wasn't an option. Because Ethan needed me, and I would not let him down the way his father had. I stood up. I washed my face. I made a list of things I needed to do. Small things. Manageable things. Call the electric company about a payment plan. Apply for food assistance. Talk to my principal about extra professional development to improve my teaching. One step at a time. One day at a time. One breath at a time. That night, when I picked up Ethan from my parents' house, he ran to me and wrapped his arms around my waist. I made you cookies, Mommy. Chocolate chip. My favorite, I said, kissing the top of his head. Are you feeling better? Yes, baby. I'm feeling much better. It wasn't a complete lie. I was feeling something. Something that kept me moving forward even when everything in me wanted to stop. Later, after cookies and a movie and bedtime stories, after Ethan was asleep, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea and my journal. I wrote. I promised myself I would be strong for him. Today I almost broke that promise. But something inside me still pulsed. Something that refuses to quit. I don't know what comes next. But I know I'm still here. Still fighting. Still breathing. And that has to be enough for now. I closed the journal and went to bed. Tomorrow I would fight again. The custody hearing on April 30th changed everything, though not in the way I expected. James showed up looking polished and successful. Designer suit. Expensive haircut. Confident smile. He looked like a man who had his life together. Like someone a judge would trust with a child. I showed up in my teacher clothes. The same navy dress I'd worn to the first hearing, because it was the only professional thing I owned that still fit my shrinking frame. I looked tired because I was tired. I looked stressed because I was stressed. I looked exactly like what I was. A woman barely holding on. Patricia sat next to me. Her hand occasionally touching my arm in reassurance. Across the aisle, James and his lawyer whispered to each other, confident and relaxed. The judge, the same woman from before, reviewed the case file. Then she asked James directly, Mr. Morrison, how many times have you seen your son since December 24th? James shifted in his seat. Your Honor, I've reached out multiple times, but Mrs. Morrison has made it difficult. That's not what I asked. How many times have you physically seen your son? Silence. Mr. Morrison. Twice, he admitted quietly. But I've been trying to establish. Twice in 4 months. And how many of those visits were overnight? None, Your Honor. We're working toward. You're working toward nothing, Mr. Morrison. You abandoned your family on Christmas Eve, failed to pay court-ordered child support for 2 months, and now you want 50-50 custody of a child you've seen twice in 4 months. His lawyer stood up. Your Honor, my client has been trying to co-parent, but Mrs. Morrison has been hostile. I'm looking at text messages in this file, the judge interrupted. 17 unanswered calls from Mrs. Morrison on Christmas Day. Multiple texts about your son being hospitalized in March. No response. A birthday party invitation in February. No response. The hostility I see is coming from your client, counselor. I watched James's face turn red. But let him feel a fraction of the humiliation he'd put me through. The judge continued. Here's my ruling. Mrs. Morrison retains primary physical and legal custody. Mr. Morrison will have supervised visitation every other Sunday for 2 hours until he can demonstrate consistent involvement. Child support is set at $1,800 per month. Mr. Morrison will also pay 75% of all medical expenses and childcare costs. And Mr. Morrison, you still owe the back support from the previous order. That's now $6,400, due within 45 days, or I'll hold you in contempt. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor, James said, his voice tight with anger. Outside the courthouse, James confronted me. Supervised visitation. You made me look like a deadbeat. I didn't make you look like anything, I said quietly. You did that yourself. This isn't over, Claire. I'm going to appeal. I'm going to fight for my son. Then fight. Show up. Be present. Prove that you actually care about him instead of just caring about winning against me. He started to respond, but I walked away. I didn't have the energy for his anger anymore. In the parking garage, Patricia hugged me. You did it. Primary custody. Increased support. This is a major win. Then why doesn't it feel like winning? Yes. Because winning in family court isn't like winning anywhere else. Everyone loses something. But you protected your son. That's what matters. $1,800 a month. With my teaching salary of $3,500, that meant I'd have a total of $5,300 a month. After rent, utilities, car payment, insurance, groceries, childcare, and debt payments, I'd have maybe $200 left. It was still tight. But it was survivable. For the first time in months, I could breathe. That night, after I put Ethan to bed, I sat at my kitchen table with a notebook. Not to wallow. Not to calculate debt. But to plan. I titled the page, What I Want My Life to Look Like. For months, I'd been in pure survival mode. Reacting. Defending. Desperately trying not to drown. But the judge's ruling had bought me something precious. Stability. Not much. Not enough. But a foundation I could maybe build on. I started writing. I want to own a home. Not rent. A place that's ours, that no landlord can take away. I want Ethan to go to college without debt. I want to never borrow money from my parents again. I want to feel safe. Financially safe. Emotionally safe. I want to be someone Ethan is proud of. I stared at that last line for a long time. Was Ethan proud of me now? All he saw was his mother struggling. Working constantly. Tired. Stressed. Barely holding it together. What was I teaching him about strength? About resilience? About what happens when life breaks you? I wanted to teach him that broken things can be rebuilt. That losing doesn't mean you stop fighting. That the lowest point isn't the end of the story. It's just the middle. But I couldn't teach him that through words. Had to show him. The next morning I made a decision. I was going to go back to school. I was going to get my master's degree in education. With a master's, I could qualify for administration positions. Assistant principal, curriculum coordinator, jobs that paid $20,000 more per year. Jobs that would lift us out of this constant financial crisis. It would mean more debt, more work, more exhaustion. But it would also mean hope. Path forward. A plan that wasn't just survival but actual progress. I researched programs. Found one that was mostly online with weekend intensives. Applied for financial aid. Wrote an essay about why I wanted to pursue advanced education, and I was brutally honest. Because I'm a single mother trying to build a better life for my son, and I refuse to stay stuck in the place life has put me. 2 weeks later, I got the acceptance letter. Full tuition coverage through a combination of grants and loans. Classes would start in August. I cried when I read it. Good tears for once. Hopeful tears. I showed Ethan the letter. Mommy's going back to school, I told him. Like my school, he asked. Kind of. I'm going to learn how to be a better teacher. So I can get a better job. So we can have a better life. We already have a good life, he said simply. And in that moment I realized something. Despite everything, the abandonment, the poverty, the struggle, Ethan was okay. He was happy. Because he had me, and I had him, and we had each other. Maybe that's all he needed. But I wanted to give him more. I wanted to give him security. Opportunities. A mother who wasn't constantly stressed and exhausted. A home that felt safe and stable. I started making other changes. Small ones but intentional. I meal prepped on Sundays to save time and money during the week. I found a free yoga class at the community center to help with my anxiety. I joined a single mom support group that met Tuesday evenings. 8 women in similar situations, sharing resources and encouragement. One of the women, Lisa, became a close friend. Her husband had left her for a co-worker 2 years ago. She'd gone through everything I was going through, the financial devastation, the legal battles, the identity crisis. But she'd come out the other side. She owned her own small business now. She was happy, thriving even. "How did you do it?" I asked her one night over coffee. "I stopped waiting for things to get better," she said. "I decided to make them better. Every day I did one thing that moved me forward. Just one thing. Some days it was applying for a job. Some days it was just getting out of bed and feeding my kids. But every single day I moved forward instead of backward. And eventually, the small things added up to big changes. One thing a day. Could do that. So I started. One thing every day that made my life better. On Monday, I organized my filing system so I could find important documents easily. Small thing, but it made me feel in control. On Tuesday, I updated my resume. On Wednesday, I called the credit card companies and negotiated lower interest rates. On Thursday, I planted herbs in pots on my windowsill. Basil, oregano, thyme. Something green and growing and hopeful. On Friday, I wrote a letter to myself. Not a journal entry. An actual letter, dated 1 year in the future, describing the life I wanted to have. "Dear Claire," I wrote. "It's May 2021. You finished your first year of grad school. Ethan is thriving. You have money in savings. You're not just surviving anymore. You're building something real. You're proud of who you're becoming. You've forgiven yourself for not being perfect. You've forgiven James for breaking your heart. You're free." I sealed the letter in an envelope and put it in my desk drawer. 1 year. That's all I was asking for. 12 months to transform my life from disaster to something resembling hope. On Saturday, I did something I'd been avoiding for months. I cleaned out James's side of the closet. His clothes were still there. The shirts I used to iron, the jackets he'd forgotten when he left, the shoes lined up neatly on the floor. I packed everything into boxes. Contacted him to pick them up. He never responded, so I donated them all to Goodwill. Then I stood in front of the closet, looking at the empty space where his life used to be, and I felt something shift inside me. This was my space now. My life. My story to write. I moved my clothes to fill the void. Hung up the dresses I'd been avoiding because they reminded me of happier times. Organized my shoes. Made the closet mine. It was symbolic. Stupid maybe. But it mattered. That night, I knelt beside my bed and prayed for the first time since Christmas Eve. Not begging. Not desperate. Just talking to God like an old friend. "I don't know if you're listening," I said. "I don't know if you were there when my life fell apart, or if you're here now while I'm trying to put it back together. But I'm going to act like you are. I'm going to act like this matters. Like I matter. Like there's a purpose to all this pain. Help me believe that. Help me become the person I need to be. Help me raise Ethan to be better than all of this. And if you can find it in your heart to make James pay his child support on time, that would be great too." I smiled at that last part. Even God had to appreciate practical prayers. When I stood up, I felt different. Lighter. Not healed. Not whole. But moving in that direction. The darkness was still there. The fear. Pain. The exhaustion. But for the first time since Christmas Eve, I could see a pinprick of light in the distance. And I decided in that moment that I would walk toward it. No matter how long it took. No matter how hard the journey. I would walk toward the light until the darkness couldn't hold me anymore. Summer came fast and fierce, bringing with it a kind of manic energy I hadn't felt in years. Maybe it was the grad school acceptance. Maybe it was the stable child support payments that finally started coming through in June. Maybe it was just that I'd been in survival mode for so long that my body and mind were starving for forward momentum. Whatever it was, I grabbed onto it with both hands and didn't let go. First victory. I paid back my parents. Every cent, $4,400. Handed to them in a check on Father's Day. My dad cried. My mom hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. "You didn't have to do this so quickly," my mother said. "Yes, I did. You sacrificed for me. I won't take that for granted." The look on their faces was worth every extra tutoring session, every dollar I'd scraped together. Second victory. I got a summer teaching position. The district was running an intensive reading program for struggling students, and they needed qualified teachers. 8 weeks, Monday through Thursday, 8 to noon. $1,500 extra dollars. Took it. Ethan went to day camp at the YMCA on a sliding scale scholarship I'd applied for. He made new friends, learned to swim, came home every day exhausted and happy. Third victory. I started grad school in August. The first class was Educational Leadership and Policy. 12 students, all of us working teachers trying to climb the ladder. The professor was intense, demanding, brilliant. The workload was crushing. 300 pages of reading a week, papers, group projects, online discussions. I loved it. For the first time in months, I was using my brain for something other than calculating bills and surviving trauma. I was learning, growing, becoming someone new. Fourth victory, I got a raise. Not much, just 3% standard across the district. But 3% of $3,500 was an extra $105 a month. I put it straight into savings. $50 every paycheck. Small but steady. Building something. Fifth victory. James actually paid child support on time for 3 months straight. $1,800 on the first of every month, like clockwork. No fights, no excuses. Just the money appearing in my account. I didn't trust it. Waited for him to miss a payment, to go back to his old patterns. But July came, August came, September came, and every month the money was there. Maybe the threat of contempt of court had scared him. Maybe Rebecca was making him act like a responsible adult. I didn't care why. I just cared that it was happening. Sixth victory. I paid off the hospital bill. Not the whole thing. I still had 18 months of payments left. But I paid an extra $200 to reduce the principal. And seeing that balance go down felt like winning a war. Seventh victory. Ethan thrived. His second grade teacher sent home glowing reports. Ethan is a joy to have in class. He's kind, hardworking, and resilient. You should be very proud. Resilient. My 7-year-old son was resilient because I'd taught him to be. Because even in the worst moments, I'd shown him that we don't quit. We adapt. We survive. We keep going. Eighth victory. I stopped crying every day. Then every week. Then I realized one day in October that I couldn't remember the last time I'd cried about James at all. The grief had dulled to a background ache instead of a constant stabbing pain. I was healing. Slowly. Imperfectly. But undeniably. Ninth victory. I made a new friend. Another teacher at my school, Marcus, a 5th grade teacher who'd been divorced for 3 years. We started having lunch together in the staff room, talking about our kids, our struggles, our dreams. Nothing romantic. Just friendship. But it reminded me that I could connect with people again. That I wasn't permanently broken. 10th victory. I finished my first semester of grad school with straight A's. For classes. 16 weeks of readings and papers and discussions and exams. Perfect grades. The dean sent an email. Outstanding work this semester. You're exactly the kind of educator we need in leadership. I printed that email and hung it on my refrigerator. 11th victory. I saved $1,000. $1,000 in a savings account that I swore I wouldn't touch except for true emergencies. It had taken 8 months to save it, $50 or $100 at a time. But it was there. Cushion. Buffer. Proof that I could plan for the future instead of just surviving the present. 12th victory. Christmas came again. 1 year since James had left. 1 year since the worst night of my life. And I threw Ethan the best Christmas I could manage. Not lavish. Not expensive. But full of love and laughter and presents. We baked cookies together. Decorated the tree together. Watched movies and drank hot chocolate and read Christmas stories. On Christmas morning, Ethan opened his presents. A bike I'd found at a yard sale and refurbished, books, Legos, a stuffed dinosaur, and he said, "This is the best Christmas ever, Mom." I didn't correct him. Didn't remind him of the Christmas before, when we'd had more money but less joy. I just hugged him and said, "I love you so much, baby." James sent a gift. A card with a $50 bill inside. No note. No apology. No acknowledgement of missing last Christmas. Just money like that could make up for absence. I let Ethan keep it. Put it in his piggy bank. Didn't say a word about his father. 13th victory. I started dating. Not seriously. Just coffee with Marcus one Saturday while Ethan was at my parents' house. We talked for 3 hours. Laughed. Connected. When he asked if he could see me again, I said yes. Didn't go anywhere. After 3 dates, we both realized we were better as friends. But it proved something important. I could trust again. I could let someone in even just a little without falling apart. 14th victory. I got promoted. Not to administration. I hadn't finished grad school yet. But to team leader for my grade level. An extra stipend of $2,000 for the year. More responsibility, more meetings, but also more influence. More respect. 15th victory. I stopped checking James's social media. I'd been torturing myself for months, looking at photos of him and Rebecca, watching them document their perfect life together. Vacations. Restaurants. Couple photos with captions about love and happiness. One day in March I just stopped. Blocked him. Blocked her. Blocked anyone who might post about them. And I felt lighter immediately. Their happiness didn't diminish mine. Their life had nothing to do with my life. I was done comparing. Done competing. Done caring. 16th victory. I paid off 2 credit cards. Not the big ones. Just the 2 smallest, $800 and $1,200. But paying them off and cutting them up felt like cutting chains. 2 fewer bills. 2 fewer weights pulling me down. 17th victory. Ethan's relationship with his father stabilized. Not in the way I'd hoped. James still only saw him every other Sunday for those supervised 2 hours. But Ethan adjusted. Accepted it. Stopped asking when Daddy was coming home. I didn't know if that was a victory or a tragedy. Probably both. 18th victory. I finished my 2nd semester of grad school. 8 more classes down. 16 to go. Halfway to my degree. Halfway to the career that would change our lives. 19th victory. I turned 33 in April. My birthday had always been depressing. Another year older. Another year further from the dreams I'd had as a young woman. But this year felt different. This year I'd survived. Rebuilt. Grown. Sarah threw me a small party. Just a few friends, cheap wine, homemade cake. We sat around my tiny apartment and talked and laughed, and I realized something. I was happy. Not healed. Not whole. But genuinely, truly happy. 20th victory. I started writing. Not journal entries. Actual writing. Essays about single motherhood, about rebuilding after betrayal, about finding strength in brokenness. I submitted one to a parenting website. They published it. Paid me $50. $50 for my words, my story, my truth. I framed the check instead of cashing it. 21st victory. I let go of the anger. Not all at once. Not completely. But slowly, over months, I felt it dissolving. The rage that had sustained me, that had kept me fighting when I wanted to quit, had served its purpose. Now it was just weighing me down. I didn't forgive James. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I stopped letting him occupy so much space in my heart and mind. He'd taken enough from me. He didn't get to take my peace too. 22nd victory. I looked in the mirror one morning in June and recognized myself again. Not the girl I'd been before James left. Not the broken woman from Christmas Eve. Someone new. Someone stronger. Someone who'd walked through fire and survived. The woman staring back at me had lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before. Gray hairs she hadn't bothered to cover. A body that had lost weight and gained it back in different places. But she was beautiful. Not despite the struggle. Because of it. Every scar told a story of survival. Every line was evidence of battles fought and won. 23rd victory. My savings account hit $3,000. $3,000 that no one could take from me. $3,000 that meant I could handle an emergency without drowning. $3,000 that proved I was building something real. I looked at that number on my phone and felt something I hadn't felt in 18 months. Pride. Not pride in what I'd lost. Pride in what I'd built from the ashes. The summer of 2021 arrived exactly 2 years after James's affair had started. 2 years since the first cracks appeared in my marriage. I should have been mourning. Should have been bitter. Instead, I was standing in my apartment, looking at the life I'd built with my own 2 hands and feeling grateful. Grateful for the struggle that had made me strong. Grateful for the betrayal that had forced me to find myself. Grateful for the darkness that had taught me to appreciate the light. I'd been abandoned, broken, destroyed, and I'd rebuilt myself into something better than I'd ever been before. The call came on a Tuesday evening in July. I was grading summer school papers at the kitchen table while Ethan played with Legos in the living room. My phone buzzed with an unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Telemarketers. Scammers. Nothing good came from unknown numbers. But something made me pick up. Hello, Claire. It's James. His voice after months of silence felt like ice water down my spine. We'd communicated only through lawyers and brief text messages about pickup times. Hearing him actually speak, hearing that familiar timbre that used to comfort me and now just made my stomach turn, was disorienting. What do you want? Kept my voice neutral. Ethan was in the next room. He didn't need to hear tension. I need to talk to you. In person. It's important. We have nothing to talk about. If it's about Ethan, text me. It's about Ethan. And other things. Please, Claire. Does coffee. 30 minutes. Every instinct screamed no. But the desperation in his voice caught me off guard. James didn't do desperate. James did confident, controlled, dismissive. This was something else. Fine. Thursday at 2. The coffee shop on Main Street. 30 minutes, James. That's it. Thank you. I hung up and stared at the phone. What could possibly be so important that he needed to see me in person? For the next 2 days, I ran through scenarios. Maybe he wanted to reduce child support. Maybe Rebecca was pregnant and he wanted to prepare me. Maybe he'd gotten a job offer in another state and wanted to move away completely. Maybe he wanted to apologize. That last thought was the most dangerous. Part of me, a small, wounded part that I'd worked so hard to heal, still wanted him to grovel, to admit what he'd done, to acknowledge the destruction he'd caused. But most of me knew that even if he did apologize, it wouldn't change anything. You can't unbreak a heart with words. Thursday arrived. I changed my shirt 3 times before settling on something casual but put together. I didn't want him to think I was trying too hard. But I also didn't want him to see how much the last 20 months had aged me. The coffee shop was busy with the lunch crowd clearing out. I arrived first, ordered tea I didn't want, sat at a corner table where we'd have some privacy. James walked in at 2:04. He looked different. Thinner. Older. There were dark circles under his eyes and new lines around his mouth. His hair was graying at the temples. He looked like a man who hadn't slept well in months. Thanks for meeting me, he said, sitting down across from me. You have 30 minutes. Talk. He took a breath. Rebecca and I broke up. Felt nothing. No satisfaction. No vindication. Just nothing. I'm sorry to hear that, I lied. We broke up 3 months ago. In April. She left me. For someone else. Someone she'd been seeing behind my back for half a year. The irony was so thick I almost laughed. Almost. And you want me to feel sorry for you? No. I don't expect sympathy. I needed you to know. 'Cause it made me realize something. It made me understand what I did to you. It took getting cheated on for you to understand that cheating is wrong. Congratulations on your moral development, James. That's not why I'm here. I know. No. Look, I'm not here for forgiveness. I don't deserve that. I'm here because I want to be a real father to Ethan. I want to change the custody arrangement. I want him more than 2 hours every other Sunday. There it was. The real reason for the meeting. You had 18 months to be a real father, I said quietly. You chose not to. I was confused. I was selfish. I was building a life with Rebecca and I didn't know how to fit Ethan into it. But now I see clearly. He's my son. I've missed so much. His first day of second grade. His birthday. Christmas. I've been a terrible father. Yes, you have. He flinched but didn't argue. I want to do better. I want to ask for joint custody. Alternating weeks. Or at least weekends. Real time with him. My hands tightened around my teacup. No. Claire. No. You don't get to walk away, miss all the hard parts, and then walk back in when it's convenient for you. Ethan has stability now. Routine. Life. You don't get to disrupt that because you're lonely and Rebecca dumped you. I'm his father. Biologically, yes. But being a father is more than DNA, James. Showing up. Being present. Putting your child's needs above your own. You've done none of that. I know. And I want to change. Please. Give me a chance. I studied him. Really looked at him. This man I'd loved for 8 years. This man who'd destroyed everything we'd built. This man who looked genuinely broken now. The way I'd been broken for so long. And I felt pity. Not love. Not forgiveness. Just pity. I'll consider it, I said slowly. But on my terms. You don't get alternating weeks. Not yet. Maybe not ever. You want more time with Ethan. Fine. You can have every Saturday noon to 6. Supervised for the first month. If that goes well unsupervised. If you miss even one Saturday, we go back to the court order. Understood. Every Saturday. I can do that. Can you? Because Ethan's heart has been broken enough. If you commit to this and then disappear again, I will make sure he never forgives you. And I'll fight you in court with everything I have. I understand. I won't disappear. I promise. Your promises don't mean much to me anymore, James. He nodded. I know. I'll prove it with actions. There was a long silence. Then he said, How is he? Ethan. Is he okay? He's better than okay. He's thriving. He's happy, doing well in school, has friends, loves swimming. He's resilient. Because of you. Yes, 'cause of me. Because I didn't abandon him when things got hard. James looked down at his hands. I'm sorry, Claire. I know that doesn't fix anything. I know it's too little, too late. But I need to say it. I'm sorry for everything. For the affair. For leaving on Christmas Eve. For taking the money. For being cruel when you needed support. For all of it. You deserved better. I wanted those words to mean something. I wanted to feel vindication or closure or something. But they were just words. Too late. Too empty. Thank you for saying that, I said, because I didn't know what else to say. Are you okay? Financially, I mean. I know I put you in a terrible position. I'm fine. I went back to school. I'm getting my master's. Got promoted. I'm managing. You went back to school. That's amazing, Claire. You always wanted to do that. I had to. You made sure of that when you left us with nothing. He flinched again. I'll increase the child support. You don't have to ask. I'll go back to court and... I don't want your guilt money, James. The court-ordered amount is fine. Just pay it on time. That's all I ask. We sat in awkward silence for another few minutes. Finally, I stood up. I need to go pick up Ethan. I'll talk to him about Saturdays. If he's open to it, you can start this weekend. Thank you, Claire. Really. Thank you. I walked to my car without looking back. That night I talked to Ethan. Gently. Carefully. Your dad called. He wants to spend more time with you. Every Saturday. Would you like that? Ethan looked up from his homework. His face unreadable. Will he actually come? Or will he say he's coming and then not show up? My heart broke a little. My 7-year-old son had learned not to trust promises. I think he'll come. He seems like he really wants to be there for you. Okay. I'll try. Then quieter. I miss having a dad. I pulled him into a hug. I know, baby. I know. That Saturday, James showed up at noon exactly. He'd brought a soccer ball and sandwiches and sunscreen. He looked nervous. Ethan looked nervous. I supervised from a bench in the park, reading a book but watching them from the corner of my eye. James taught Ethan to dribble. They kicked the ball back and forth, ate lunch on a picnic blanket, talked about school and friends and dinosaurs, Ethan's current obsession. At 6 o'clock, James brought him back to me. Ethan was smiling. Genuinely smiling. Did you have fun? Yes. Yeah. Dad's gonna teach me to ride my bike without training wheels next week. That sounds great, baby. After Ethan ran inside to wash his hands, James lingered. Thank you for giving me this chance. Don't thank me. Prove that you deserve it. He nodded and left. The Saturdays continued. Week after week, James showed up. Time. Prepared. Present. He kept his promises. Ethan started talking about his dad again. Not with the desperate longing of a child who'd been abandoned, but with a casual mention of a kid who had a relationship with both parents. Dad says I can sleep over when I'm 8. Dad taught me how to throw a football. Dad bought me a book about space. Part of me was happy for Ethan. But part of me was angry. Where was this father when we needed him? When I was drowning? When Ethan cried himself to sleep asking why Daddy didn't love him anymore? James's redemption felt like an insult to everything I'd survived. But I kept those feelings to myself. Because Ethan deserved a father, even an imperfect, reformed one. August came. September. October. James didn't miss a single Saturday. Then, on a Friday evening in November, my phone rang again. Unknown number again. But this time it wasn't James. Is this Claire Morrison? Yes. Who's calling? This is Mercy Hospital. You're listed as an emergency contact for James Morrison. There's been an accident. The world tilted. What kind of accident? Is he okay? He's in surgery right now. Serious. Can you come to the hospital? I looked at Ethan doing homework at the kitchen table, unaware that his father might be dying. I'm on my way. I called my mother to watch Ethan. Didn't explain, just said it was an emergency. She was there in 15 minutes. I drove to the hospital with my heart pounding, not knowing what I'd find. Not knowing if James would survive the night. Not knowing how to feel about any of it. And then the phone rang. The phone rang again before I even reached the hospital parking lot. Same unknown number. Mrs. Morrison, this is Dr. Patel. I'm calling about James Morrison. I need to update you on his condition. I pulled into a parking space, hands shaking. Is he alive? Yes. He's out of surgery. It was a car accident. Another driver ran a red light and T-boned his vehicle. He has a fractured pelvis, 3 broken ribs, a collapsed lung, and significant internal bleeding that we've managed to repair. He's critical but stable. Will he survive? The next 48 hours are crucial. But if there are no complications, yes, I believe he will. I sat in my car in the hospital parking lot and felt 1,000 conflicting emotions crash over me at once. Relief that Ethan wouldn't lose his father. Anger that I had to care. Exhaustion at being pulled back into James's orbit. Guilt for the part of me that had wondered, for just a split second when I got the first call, if it would be easier if he didn't survive. I hated myself for that thought. Inside the hospital, a nurse directed me to the ICU waiting room. James's mother was already there, along with his brother Marcus. His mother looked decades older than the last time I'd seen her. At our wedding, smiling and hopeful. Claire, she said when she saw me, and she started crying. Thank you for coming. I know things between you and James are complicated, but... He's Ethan's father, I said simply. Of course I came. We sat in uncomfortable silence. What do you say to the mother of the man who destroyed your life? The woman who raised the person who'd abandoned your child on Christmas Eve. Finally she spoke. I want you to know that I never approved of what he did. Leaving you like that. The affair. None of it. I told him he was making the biggest mistake of his life. Did you? I said quietly. Because I remember seeing you comment, "beautiful couple," on his Facebook photos with Rebecca. She had the decency to look ashamed. I was trying to support my son. But I was wrong. You were family. You deserved my loyalty too. I didn't respond. What was there to say? After 2 hours a doctor came out. He's awake. He's asking for Claire. Everyone looked at me. I'll go, I said, standing up. The ICU was all beeping machines and antiseptic smell. James looked small in the hospital bed, tubes and wires connecting him to various monitors. His face was bruised, one eye swollen shut. He looked fragile, broken. He'd looked the same way when I told him about my father's death 5 years ago, when I'd miscarried between trying for Ethan. In those moments I'd held him, comforted him, loved him through the pain. Now I just stood by the bed waiting. "Claire," he whispered. His voice was rough, damaged. "I'm here. Your mom called me. Thank you for coming. How are you feeling?" Like I got hit by a truck, which apparently I did. He tried to smile but winced in pain. "The doctor says you'll recover. It'll take time, but you'll be okay." "Will I be okay?" He wasn't talking about his injuries. I didn't answer. "I need to tell you something," he said. "In case I don't make it. You're going to make it. But in case I don't, I need you to know that the last 6 months, the Saturdays with Ethan, have been the best part of my life. Better than anything with Rebecca. Better than the affair and the excitement and all the things I thought I wanted. Just being his dad. Being present. That's what mattered. I'm glad you figured that out. And I need you to know that you were right. About everything. You're an incredible mother. An incredible person. I destroyed the best thing in my life because I was an idiot chasing something shiny and new. And I'm sorry. I know I've said it before, but I need to say it now, when it might be my last chance. I'm sorry for all of it. I looked at this broken man, this stranger who used to be my husband, and I felt something shift in my chest. Not forgiveness exactly, but something close to it. Release. "I forgive you," I heard myself say. And I meant it. Not because he deserved it. Not because what he'd done was okay. But because carrying the anger and hurt was exhausting, and I was tired of letting him occupy so much space in my heart. You don't have to. I know. But I do. For me. Not for you. Because I need to let this go so I can move forward completely. Tears leaked from his good eye. "Thank you. But James, forgiving you doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean we're friends. Doesn't mean I trust you. It just means I'm done letting what you did define who I am. I understand. And if you survive this, which you will, you're going to keep showing up for Ethan. Every Saturday. Every birthday. Every school event. You're going to be the father you should have been from the beginning. Because he deserves that. I will. I promise." "Good. Now rest. Your mom is in the waiting room. She's worried about you." I turned to leave. "Claire." I looked back. "You're going to do amazing things. You always were. I just couldn't see it because I was too focused on myself." I nodded and walked out. In the waiting room, I told his mother he was awake and asking for her. She hugged me tight, desperate. "Thank you. For everything. For being the bigger person." I went home. My mother was reading to Ethan on the couch. "How's Daddy?" Ethan asked immediately. "He's hurt pretty badly, baby. But he's going to be okay. He's very strong." "Can I see him?" "Not yet. Soon. When he's feeling better." That night, after Ethan was asleep, I sat on my bed and opened the letter I'd written to myself a year and a half ago. The one dated May 2021. I read my own words. "You finished your first year of grad school. Ethan is thriving. You have money in savings. You're not just surviving anymore. You're building something real. You're proud of who you're becoming. You've forgiven yourself for not being perfect. You've forgiven James for breaking your heart. You're free. I'd written about forgiveness like it was a destination. But sitting there, having just forgiven James in his hospital room, I realized it wasn't a moment. It was a process. A daily choice to let go of bitterness, to release the past, to choose peace over pain. I picked up my journal and wrote a new entry. November 12, 2021. James almost died today. And I realized something. I don't want him to suffer. I don't want revenge. I don't want him to hurt the way he hurt me. I just want to be free from the weight of hating him. So I forgave him. Not because he earned it, but because I needed it. And now, for the first time since Christmas Eve 2019, I feel light. Like I've been carrying a boulder up a mountain and finally set it down. I'm free. Not because my circumstances are perfect, they're not. Not because he fixed what he broke, he can't. But because I chose freedom over bitterness. And that choice is mine. No one can take it from me. James recovered. Slowly, painfully, but he recovered. By January, he was walking with a cane. By March, he was back at work part-time. And through it all, he kept his promise. Every Saturday with Ethan, even when he was still healing, even when he was clearly in pain. Ethan noticed. "Dad never misses our days," he said one night at dinner. "No," I agreed. "He doesn't. Do you think he's changed? Like really changed?" Thought about it. I think losing everything, losing us, losing Rebecca, almost losing his life, taught him what matters. Sometimes people need to lose everything to figure out what's important. Are you still mad at him? No, baby. I'm not mad anymore. I'm just focused on our life. On building something good for us. I like our life, Ethan said simply. Me too. And I meant it. I liked the life we'd built from the ruins of the old one. I liked who I'd become. Stronger, wiser, more resilient. I liked that Ethan was learning that you can survive terrible things and still find joy on the other side. In April, I got the news I'd been working toward for 2 years. I'd been offered an assistant principal position at a different school in the district. $58,000 a year. Benefits. Respect. Career, not just a job. Accepted immediately. In May, I walked across the stage and received my master's degree. My parents were there. Ethan was there, cheering louder than anyone. James was there too in the back, and when I walked past him after the ceremony, he nodded. Just once. A gesture of respect and acknowledgement. Done it. Everything I'd said I would do, I'd done. Despite the abandonment. Despite the poverty. Despite the depression and panic attacks and moments I'd wanted to quit. I'd finished. In June, Ethan turned 8. We had a party at the park, his friends, my family. James came too, brought a present, stayed for an hour, then left quietly. No drama. No tension. Just a father showing up for his son. That night, after everyone left, Ethan climbed into my lap. Too big for it now, but still my baby. "This was the best birthday ever, Mom." "I'm glad, sweetheart. You know what I wished for when I blew out the candles?" "What?" "I wished that you'd always be happy. Because you deserve it." I held him close and cried. Good tears. Grateful tears. Healing tears. My 8-year-old son, who'd been through so much, who'd watched his family fall apart and slowly rebuild, was wishing for my happiness. I'd protected him. Despite everything, I'd protected him. And somehow, in protecting him, I'd saved myself too. 3 years after James left me on Christmas Eve, I found myself sitting in a coffee shop with a woman I'd never met before. Her name was Anna, and she'd reached out after reading one of my essays about single motherhood and rebuilding after betrayal. "I need to know how you did it," she said, her voice breaking. "My husband just left 2 weeks ago. He said he doesn't love me anymore. We have 2 kids. I don't know how to survive this." I looked at her red-rimmed eyes, her trembling hands, her whole body radiating the fresh, raw pain of abandonment, and I saw myself 3 years ago. Broken. Terrified. Convinced I'd never be whole again. "You survive it one day at a time," I told her. "Some days 1 hour at a time. And I'm not going to lie to you. It's going to be the hardest thing you've ever done. But you will survive it. And eventually you'll do more than survive. You'll rebuild something beautiful. I don't feel strong enough. Neither did I. But strength isn't something you have. Something you build. Every time you get out of bed when you want to stay under the covers. Every time you feed your kids when you can barely feed yourself. Every time you choose to keep going when quitting would be easier. That's where strength comes from. She started crying. I reached across the table and held her hand. The thing no one tells you, I said softly, is that this pain has a purpose. Right now it feels like it's destroying you. And in a way it is. It's destroying the version of you that believed certain things about love and marriage and forever. But from those ashes you get to build something new. Someone stronger. Someone who knows their own worth. How long does it take to feel okay again? Everyone's different. For me, it took about a year before I stopped crying every day. 2 years before I could think about him without feeling rage or grief. 3 years before I could genuinely say I was happy. But Anna, those timelines don't matter. What matters is that you start. Today. Right now. You make one tiny decision that moves you forward instead of backward. What was your first decision? Thought about it. I decided that my son would never see me quit. That no matter how broken I felt, I would show up for him. That one decision carried me through everything else. We talked for 2 hours. I gave her the names of lawyers, resources for single mothers, tips for managing the financial devastation. But more than that, I gave her hope. Because I was living proof that you can be destroyed and still rebuild. After she left, I sat in that coffee shop thinking about the journey I'd been on. 3 years. 1,095 days since the worst night of my life. And somehow, impossibly, I was happy. Not the naive happiness of my 20s, when I thought love was enough and forever was guaranteed. But a deeper, harder-won happiness. The kind that comes from surviving fire and discovering you're fireproof. I thought about James and the strange, unexpected place we'd arrived at. We weren't friends. We'd never be friends. But we were good co-parents. He saw Ethan every Saturday without fail and one evening a week for dinner. He paid child support on time. He showed up for school events and doctor's appointments. He'd become the father he should have been from the beginning. And I'd forgiven him. Not in a grand, dramatic moment, but gradually over months and years, letting go of the anger piece by piece until one day I realized it was just gone. I didn't hate him anymore. I didn't wish him harm. I didn't spend energy thinking about him at all except as Ethan's father. The forgiveness wasn't for him. It was for me. Because holding on to that rage was like drinking poison and expecting him to die. It was destroying me, not him. So I let it go. I thought about the lessons I'd learned in the darkness. Lessons I never wanted to learn but now couldn't imagine living without. The first lesson: you are stronger than you think. When James left, I was convinced I couldn't survive without him. He'd been my partner for 8 years. My best friend. The person I made every decision with. The thought of navigating life alone, of raising Ethan alone, of being alone was terrifying. But I did it. I made decisions. I solved problems. Built a life. And I discovered that the strength was inside me all along. I just needed the crisis to reveal it. The second lesson: your worth is not determined by whether someone chooses to stay. James's decision to leave wasn't a referendum on my value. It was a statement about his character, his choices, his failures. I'd spent months thinking I wasn't pretty enough, interesting enough, exciting enough. That if I'd been better somehow, he wouldn't have left. But that was a lie. His affair had nothing to do with my inadequacies and everything to do with his. He chose immediate gratification over integrity. He chose selfishness over responsibility. He chose easy over right. Those were his failures, not mine. The third lesson: rock bottom is a foundation, not a grave. When I lost everything, my marriage, my savings, my sense of identity, I thought it was the end. But it was actually the beginning. Because when everything is stripped away, you get to rebuild intentionally. You get to choose what matters. You get to create a life based on your values instead of someone else's expectations. The fourth lesson. Children are more resilient than we think, but only if we're honest with them. I tried so hard to protect Ethan from the truth about his father. But eventually, I realized that protecting him from pain was impossible. What I could do was teach him how to process it, how to feel his feelings, how to be sad without being destroyed, how to love someone who's hurt you, how to forgive without forgetting. Those were the real gifts. The fifth lesson. Forgiveness is not about the person who hurt you. It's about your own freedom. I thought forgiveness meant saying what James did was okay. It meant I had to reconcile with him or trust him again. But that's not what forgiveness is. Forgiveness is saying, what you did hurt me deeply, but I'm not going to let it hurt me anymore. I'm releasing you from the debt you owe me because carrying it is too heavy. The sixth lesson. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the best thing that ever happened to you. I would never have chosen this path. Never have asked for this pain. But going through it transformed me into someone I actually liked. Someone strong and wise and compassionate. Someone who knew her worth and wouldn't settle for less than she deserved. The seventh lesson. You teach people how to treat you. 4 years, I'd accepted crumbs from James. Believed his lies. Made excuses for his behavior. Prioritized his needs over my own. I taught him that he could treat me poorly and I'd still be there. Once I learned to set boundaries, to demand respect, to walk away from situations that didn't serve me, everything changed. Not just with James, but in every relationship in my life. The eighth lesson. Community matters. I couldn't have survived without my parents, my friends, the single mother support group, the teachers who mentored me, the lawyers who helped me navigate the system. No one survives trauma alone. We need each other. We need to be vulnerable enough to ask for help and generous enough to give it when we're able. The ninth lesson. Your past doesn't define your future. Yes, I was abandoned. Yes, I was betrayed. Yes, I struggled. But those were things that happened to me, not things that defined me. I got to choose who I became in response to those circumstances. I got to write the next chapter of my story. The 10th lesson. Gratitude transforms everything. When I started focusing on what I had instead of what I'd lost, my entire perspective shifted. I had Ethan. I had my health. I had a job, a home, food to eat. I had parents who loved me. Friends who supported me. A mind that could learn. A heart that could heal. When I counted those blessings instead of dwelling on the betrayal, I found peace. I left the coffee shop and drove to Ethan's school to pick him up. He was waiting outside with his backpack, talking animatedly with his friends. When he saw me, his whole face lit up. Mom, guess what? I got 100 on my math test. That's amazing, buddy. I'm so proud of you. On the drive home, he chattered about his day, his teacher, his friends, the book he was reading. And I listened, really listened, grateful for every mundane detail. This was the life I'd built from ruins. Not perfect. Not the life I'd planned. But good. Real. That night, after dinner and homework and bedtime stories, I stood in Ethan's doorway watching him sleep, just like I had on that terrible Christmas Eve 3 years ago. Back then I'd been terrified, broken, convinced we wouldn't survive. Now I was standing in the same place, but I was different. Whole in a way I'd never been before. Not despite the breaking, but because of it. I'd been abandoned on Christmas Eve. But what happened that night, and in all the days that followed, changed my entire destiny. It forced me to become someone stronger, someone capable, someone who knew that she could handle anything life threw at her because she'd already survived the worst. I walked to my room and opened my journal one more time. December 24th, 2022. 3 years ago tonight my life ended. Or at least, the life I'd known ended. And for a long time I saw that as tragedy. But tonight I see it differently. That night was the beginning of something new. Something better. I became the person I was always meant to be. I just needed to be broken first so I could rebuild intentionally. If I could go back and change what happened, would I? I don't know. Part of me says yes because the pain was excruciating. But part of me says no because I love who I've become. And I wouldn't be this person without that pain. So maybe the answer is that I wouldn't change it. Maybe the answer is gratitude. Thank you, pain, for teaching me. Thank you, betrayal, for showing me my strength. Thank you, Christmas Eve 2019, for ending one story so a better one could begin. I closed the journal, turned off the light, and went to sleep. And for the first time in 3 years, I didn't dream about the past. I dreamed about the future. 5 years after James abandoned me on Christmas Eve, I stood in front of a mirror in a hotel room, adjusting my dress. It was red, the same color as the dress I'd worn that terrible night. But everything else was different. I was different. Tonight was the annual District Education Gala, and I was receiving an award, Administrator of the Year, for innovative leadership, for mentoring struggling teachers, for creating programs that supported students from difficult home situations. The irony wasn't lost on me. The woman who'd been broken by abandonment was now being honored for helping others heal. Ethan, now 10 years old, knocked on the bathroom door. "Mom, we need to go. Grandma says we're going to be late." "Coming, sweetheart." I looked at myself one more time. Gray streaks in my hair that I no longer bothered to hide. Lines around my eyes from smiling more than crying these days. A body that had carried stress and rebuilt strength. A face that had seen darkness and chosen light anyway. I looked like a woman who had survived. Who had thrived. At the gala, I sat with my parents, Ethan and Sarah. My principal gave a speech about my accomplishments. How I transformed a struggling school. How I mentored new teachers. How I'd established a support fund for students facing homelessness and food insecurity. How I showed up every day with compassion and excellence. When I walked to the stage to accept the award, I saw faces in the crowd. Colleagues, friends, former students. And in the back, surprisingly, James. He'd asked if he could come, said Ethan wanted him there. I'd said yes because that night wasn't about him. It was about me. I took the microphone and looked out at the hundreds of people gathered in the ballroom. 5 years ago, I began. I was in the darkest place of my life. I'd lost my marriage, my savings, my sense of identity. I was a single mother barely keeping my head above water. Convinced I'd failed at everything that mattered. If you'd told me then that I'd be standing here tonight, I wouldn't have believed you. I saw people nodding, some wiping their eyes. But here's what I learned in that darkness. You are not defined by what happens to you. You're defined by how you respond to it. When life breaks you, and it will break you because pain is universal, you have a choice. You can stay broken or you can rebuild. You can become bitter or you can become better. You can focus on what you lost, or you can focus on what you still have and what you can create. I looked at Ethan, sitting in the front row, beaming with pride. I chose to rebuild. Not perfectly. Not without mistakes and setbacks and nights I wanted to quit. But I rebuilt. One decision at a time. One day at a time. And somewhere along the way, I discovered something surprising. The worst thing that ever happened to me became the foundation for the best life I could have imagined. I held up the award. This isn't just recognition for my professional accomplishments. To me, this represents every single parent who's struggling and showing up anyway. Every person who's been betrayed and chosen to forgive. Every human being who's been knocked down and gotten back up. We are stronger than we know. We are capable of more than we imagine. And our stories don't end with our pain. They begin there. The applause was thunderous. People stood. I saw my mother crying happy tears. My father nodding with pride. Sarah cheering. And Ethan, my beautiful, resilient son, clapping louder than anyone. After the ceremony, people approached me with their own stories. A teacher whose husband had left her. A principal who'd filed for bankruptcy. Counselor who'd lost a child. They thanked me for my honesty, for my vulnerability, for showing them that survival was possible. James approached me last. He hung back until everyone else had gone. "That was a beautiful speech," he said quietly. "Thank you. I'm proud of you, Claire. For all of this. For who you've become." I studied him. 5 years had changed him too. More gray hair. Humbler posture. Eyes that had seen consequences. "I'm proud of me too," I said simply. "I know this doesn't change anything, but I need you to know. Leaving you was the biggest mistake of my life. Not because my life fell apart, although it did. But because I lost the chance to watch you become this. To be part of this journey. You're remarkable." "I was always remarkable, James. You just couldn't see it." He nodded. "You're right. Couldn't. I'm sorry for that. For all of it. I know you are. And I've forgiven you. But that doesn't mean I regret how things turned out. 'Cause I don't. This life, the one I built from the ruins you left, is better than anything we had together." "I believe that," he said. "Ethan is lucky to have you." "Yes, he is." James left, and I felt nothing but peace. No anger. No regret. No what-ifs. Just gratitude for the journey that had brought me here. That night, after we got home, after my parents left and Ethan was in bed, I sat on my couch with a cup of tea and looked around my apartment. It was still small. Still modest. But it was ours. And it was full of love. I thought about Christmas Eve 5 years ago. The door slamming. The wreath falling. The moment my life shattered. If I could go back and talk to that broken woman standing in the hallway, what would I tell her? I'd tell her that the pain she's feeling won't last forever. That she's stronger than she knows. That her son will be okay because she'll make sure of it. That the darkness is temporary but the lessons are permanent. That 5 years from now, she'll be standing on a stage accepting an award. And she'll be genuinely, truly happy. I'd tell her that abandonment is not the end of her story. It's the beginning of a better one. I'd tell her to hold on. Keep fighting. To trust that the person she becomes will be worth the pain of transformation. But mostly I'd tell her this. You are not broken. You are breaking open. And everything you need to rebuild is already inside you. I picked up my phone and opened my notes app. I've been writing a book. A memoir about survival and rebuilding. Tonight felt like the right night to finish it. I wrote the final chapter. The door slammed 5 years ago, and my life as I knew it ended. But endings are also beginnings. The rubble becomes the foundation. The breaking becomes the breakthrough. The abandonment becomes the liberation. Today, I am everything I needed to be for myself. Strong. Independent. Whole. I built a career I'm proud of. I raised a son who's kind and resilient. I learned to forgive, not for the person who hurt me but for my own freedom. I learned to love myself, not despite my scars but because of them. And I learned the most important lesson of all. You are never as broken as you think you are. Even in your darkest moment, even when you're convinced you can't survive, something inside you is already rebuilding. Something is already preparing for the next chapter. Something is already refusing to quit. That something is your spirit, your strength, your unbreakable core. And it will carry you through anything. I saved the document. Tomorrow, I'd send it to the literary agent who'd expressed interest. But tonight, I just sat with the satisfaction of having completed something I never thought I'd be capable of. A knock on my door startled me. It was late, almost 11. I looked through the peephole and saw Sarah. "What are you doing here?" I asked, opening the door. "I couldn't let this day end without giving you this," she said, handing me a wrapped box. "Sarah, you didn't have to. Open it." Inside was a framed photo from the gala. Me on stage, holding the award mid-speech. But it wasn't my face that caught my attention. It was the audience behind me. Hundreds of people, all looking at me with attention, respect, hope. "I wanted you to see what I see," Sarah said. "A woman who survived hell and came out shining. A woman who's changing lives just by showing up and being honest. A woman who proved that rock bottom is just the foundation for something beautiful." I hugged her tight, tears streaming down my face. "Thank you. For everything. For being there through all of it. That's what friends do," she said. "We witness each other's transformations." After she left, I hung the photo in my bedroom, right across from my bed. So every morning when I woke up, I'd see that woman. The one who survived. The one who rebuilt. The one who refused to let abandonment define her destiny. Before I went to sleep, I did something I hadn't done in years. I pulled out the letter I'd written to myself on that terrible Christmas Eve. The one where I'd promised to be strong for Ethan. The one where I'd said, something inside me still pulsed. I read it and cried. Not sad tears. Grateful tears. Kept that promise. I'd been strong. And that pulse, that tiny stubborn flame that refused to be extinguished, had grown into a fire that lit not just my path, but the paths of others. I wrote one more entry in my journal. Christmas Eve 2019 was the worst night of my life. And the best thing that ever happened to me. Because it forced me to become someone I'm proud to be. Someone strong enough to rebuild. Wise enough to forgive. Brave enough to start over. I wouldn't choose that pain again. But I wouldn't undo it either. Because this version of me, the one who survived and thrived, is worth every tear, every struggle, every moment of darkness. I closed the journal and whispered to the universe. Thank you. For the breaking that led to the building. For the ending that led to the beginning. For the abandonment that led to the awakening. Thank you. And then I thought about you. Yes, you. The person reading this story or watching this journey unfold. Maybe you're standing in your own hallway, watching your life fall apart. Maybe you're in the middle of your own darkness, convinced you won't survive. Maybe you've been abandoned, betrayed, broken, and you're wondering if you'll ever feel whole again. I want you to know you will. Not today. Not tomorrow. But eventually. One day at a time. One decision at a time. One breath at a time. Your story doesn't end with your pain. It begins there. So I'm asking you the same question I ask myself every day. What will you build from your ashes? Who will you become in response to what tried to destroy you? How will you transform your pain into purpose? The choice is yours. It always has been. And you? Have you forgiven what hurt you? Have you let go of the weight that's been crushing you? Have you chosen freedom over bitterness, hope over despair, building over breaking? If not, maybe it's time to start. Because 5 years from now, you could be standing somewhere you never imagined, accepting the life you rebuilt, grateful for the journey that brought you there. The door slammed. The life ended. The story began. What will yours be?